For 9-year-old Reneesme Yutsi, life was meant to be full of promise. She was a sweet and thoughtful child who always wanted to help others. Her great-aunt, Christine Fletcher, described her as 4 foot tall with long blonde hair and bright blue eyes. Reneesme also had intellectual disabilities, which left her especially exposed. Instead of being kept safe, this weakness was taken advantage of by the very people who were supposed to care for her. When her small body was pulled from the Yoya River on September 4, 2025, weighing only 45 pounds and showing clear signs of repeated abuse, it marked the tragic end of a life filled with suffering beyond words. Cristina Benedetto was just 16 when she gave birth to Reneesme. She and the child's grandmother, Linda Miller, cared for her until she turned 5. Benedetto remembers those years as precious. Before she left us, she had so much light in her eyes, she later said. But by her early 20s, addiction had taken hold of Benedetto's life. Faced with a painful choice and convinced she was acting in her children's best interests, she made the heartbreaking decision to hand over legal guardianship to relatives. "It was the hardest choice I ever made," Benedetto admitted. "At that time, I wasn't safe for them. Child Services told me it was better to give guardianship to Sarah and Courtney. They promised me my kids would be safe in their care." Sarah Shipley was Benedetto's cousin by blood, while Courtney Yutsi was related to Reneesme's father. These were not strangers, they were family. People Benedetto trusted with what mattered most in her world. In 2019, 5-year-old Reneesme and her 3 younger siblings, then aged 2, 1, and a newborn, went to live with Shipley and Yutsi at their home on 3rd Street in Dunbar Borough, Fayette County. Sarah Shipley became the official custodian of the children, while Courtney Yutsi was the daily caretaker. The children called Courtney Mom and Sarah Dad. For Benedetto, this was always meant to be temporary. She hoped to come back for them once she rebuilt her life. She explained she was trying to get clean, to start over, to be the mother her kids deserved. But over time, staying in contact became harder. "Sarah stopped answering me," Benedetto said. "She only spoke when she wanted money or needed gifts for the kids." What no one outside knew was that behind the doors of that house on 3rd Street, for vulnerable children were being cruelly abused and shut off from the world. The home, which was meant to be safe, had turned into something very different. None of the children were allowed to attend school. They were hidden from teachers, doctors, and social workers, anyone who might have noticed the obvious signs of abuse and neglect that grew worse with time. District Attorney Michael Ohl later described it as a long-term pattern of abuse against one or more of the children. He explained, these children were underweight and likely malnourished. For Reneesme, with her intellectual disabilities, the isolation was even more damaging. She was highly vulnerable and unable to fully grasp what was happening or why. The little girl once remembered as gentle and eager to help was now trapped in what could only be called a house of horrors. The mistreatment was harsh and relentless. All 4 children showed evidence of abuse, but Reneesme suffered the most. She was extremely thin, covered in bruises, and bore cigarette burns across her body. One serious burn on her back, caused during a bath about a week before her death, had been left untreated and became infected. District Attorney Ohl later said that everyone in the home would have been aware of her condition. Any abuse seen by a parent must be reported. If they don't, that parent is just as responsible, he explained. But there was no one to report it to, no teachers to raise questions, no doctors to investigate injuries, no neighbors near enough to hear her cries. On Monday, September 2, 2025, the abuse in the 3rd Street home continued as usual. But for 9-year-old Reneesme, it was her last day alive. Around 10 p.m. that night, she was last seen alive by one of the other children in the house. What happened next was witnessed by a terrified sibling who later had to describe it all to police. The child was woken by Reneesme's screams and sobs coming from her room. Watching in fear, They saw both Courtney Yutsi and Sarah Shipley yelling at Reneesme before kicking her in the stomach. When Shipley noticed the child watching, she struck the young witness in the mouth, a chilling example of the fear and intimidation used to silence anyone who might speak out. During the assault, the witness overheard the adults talking about taking Reneesme to a river far away. Later that night, the child would see something that would never leave their memory. Reneesme's lifeless body was first placed into a black trash bag, then stuffed inside a tote bin. The child witness recalled her lips were pale and she looked as if asleep. According to Courtney Yutsi's later confession to police, Reneesme had vomited and started choking that night, possibly from the infected burn on her back. Yutsi said she attempted CPR for nearly half an hour, but the girl did not survive. Still, with the pattern of cruelty and the witness statement, the real truth of Renee's last moments remained deeply unsettling. What is certain is that instead of calling for help, instead of seeking a doctor, instead of doing anything that might have saved her, both women chose to hide her death and throw her away like garbage. Though Reneesme died the evening of September 2nd, it wasn't until 12:41 p.m. the next day that Courtney Yutsi and Sarah Shipley contacted Pennsylvania State Police with what they framed as a missing child report. They spun a detailed lie, claiming 9-year-old Reneesme had wandered off around 2 a.m. with her bedroom window left partly open. For a child with intellectual challenges to leave alone at night in September seemed improbable, yet it sparked a wide-scale search. The delay was intentional. Between 3:53 a.m. and 6 a.m. on September 3rd, security footage showed a car pulling up to the 3rd Street home with someone making repeated trips inside. In this span, Yutsi was discarding Renee's remains at the Ugiogeni River about 20 miles from Dunbar. The false missing person report triggered a major manhunt. Pennsylvania State Police deployed several teams, dogs, rescue crews, and even set up a command post in Dunbar Borough. Local residents joined the search, wasting crucial hours looking for a child who had already died, her body hidden by those who claimed she was missing. Shockingly, Courtney Yutsi even posted on Facebook with a picture of Reneesme, writing, "Please help us find our little girl and bring her back." The cold calculation behind this is staggering, using social media to push the lie while knowing exactly where her body lay. For 13 hours, Christina Benedetto searched frantically for her daughter, unaware she would never hold her alive again. "They wouldn't let me have any contact with the kids," she later said. She had been barred from her children for years, and now she was searching for a daughter murdered by the very relatives she had trusted to protect her. By Wednesday night, detectives began noticing flaws in the account. Data showed Renee's device had pinged inside the house at 6 a.m. on September 3rd, undermining the claim she left at 2 a.m. Surveillance didn't match the timeline either. But it was the children who broke the case wide open. As police prepared search warrants, one child came forward with shattering honesty. "I'm never going to see my baby sister again because she's in heaven," the child told officers, apologizing for not revealing it sooner. With heartbreaking bravery, the child said their mother hurt her sister and put her in a tote. During interviews with child services, more painful truths emerged. The siblings, despite their trauma and fear of retaliation, gave testimony that would become crucial against Yutsi and Shipley. They detailed the ongoing abuse they endured, including the violence that led directly to Reneesme's death. With overwhelming proof from video, phone records, and above all the courageous words of the surviving children, Courtney Yutsi's lies collapsed. In a police interview at 10:40 p.m. on September 3rd, she finally confessed. Just hours later, at 2 a.m. on September 4th, Yutsi led investigators to Reneesme's remains. The 9-year-old was discovered partly submerged on a riverbank near Smithton in Westmoreland County. Her fragile body carried clear evidence of the long-term abuse she had endured. District Attorney Michael Lowell struggled to describe what was found. "It's clear this girl suffered," he said. "Sweet, innocent little girl had to have lived through horror." Courtney Melinda Yutsi, 31, was arrested on September 4, 2025. She faced an extensive list of charges covering the full range of her crimes: criminal homicide, 2 counts of aggravated assault, child endangerment, abuse of a corpse, evidence tampering, and concealing a child's death. At her arraignment before District Judge Jason Cox, she was denied bail and held at Fayette County Prison as a danger to herself and others. But the case was not finished. Sarah Ann Shipley, 35, the court-appointed guardian who had taken part in both the mistreatment and the cover-up, was also charged. On Friday, September 6, after attempting suicide by overdose at her home, Shipley was charged with criminal homicide, conspiracy to commit homicide, child endangerment, aggravated assault, abuse of a corpse, and tampering with evidence. According to the complaint, Shipley helped carry the garbage bag with Reneesme's body to Yutsi's car before it was taken to the river. When questioned in the hospital after her attempt, she did not speak but was awake and nodded yes when detectives asked, "Did you try to kill yourself because of what happened to Reneesme?" District Attorney Oral stated the investigation is ongoing and more charges may follow. He also confirmed another child from the home was hospitalized. The charges against both women will move through the grand jury with heavy media coverage likely throughout the trial. For Cristina Benedetto, learning the truth about her daughter's death has been heartbreaking beyond measure. The guilt of placing her children with trusted relatives, the forced years apart, and now knowing how her daughter was treated has left her unable to process such a painful loss. She did not deserve the abuse, the hunger, or any of it. She did not deserve to be discarded. Benedetto said, "My baby didn't deserve that. She was innocent." The betrayal feels even deeper because it came from people she knew. "I learned a hard life lesson. You can't even trust those closest to you. I grew up with Sarah. Courtney was Reneesme's blood cousin," she explained. Benedetto has now become a strong voice for justice. "They don't deserve a plea deal. They ignored my baby's cries. They don't deserve a plea deal, and I'll make sure they don't get one," she declared at a vigil for Reneesme. The 3 surviving siblings, now 7, 4, and 2, were removed from the home and placed with another relative. These children carry the trauma of witnessing ongoing abuse and their sister's murder. Their testimony was vital in building the case, showing remarkable bravery despite their age. Family members, including great-aunt Christine Fletcher, have joined calls for justice while grieving their own loss and pointing to the failures of the system. "The system failed my niece. They took her kids and promised they'd be safe," Fletcher said. The case highlights a collapse of child protection at every stage: placement choices, oversight, reporting, and agency coordination. The biggest failure was the lack of professional oversight. None of the children went to school, removing a vital safety net for spotting abuse. Teachers, nurses, and counselors are trained reporters who could have noticed the signs. Kinship care may have further reduced oversight, as children placed with relatives are often assumed safe, leading to less monitoring. In this case, that assumption cost a life. Reneesme was failed by every safeguard. Her disabilities, which should have brought extra protection, instead made her a target for those who exploited her. Cristina Benedetto's grief shows the depth of this tragedy. Why put her in a tote, a garbage bag, and throw her away like she was nothing? She mattered. To us, she was everything. As the legal process continues and the community begins to heal, Reneesme's story must inspire real reform of child protection systems. Her death was preventable, making it not only a crime but also a moral failure demanding change so no other vulnerable child faces the same neglect. The little girl once described as caring and eager to help deserved far better than the suffering she endured. Her memory calls for justice and stronger safeguards for children who rely on society for safety. As her great-aunt Christine Fletcher said, her voice needs to be heard. We need to learn everything that happened and make sure justice is served to the fullest. This was a baby. She didn't ask for this. Reneesme Yutsi mattered. Her life had meaning, and her death must never be forgotten. The case remains active in the courts, with both defendants charged and awaiting trial. All information here comes from official police reports, court filings, and confirmed news sources. If you or someone you know is in danger, please contact authorities immediately or call the Child Help National Child Abuse Hotline at 1-800-422-4453. Please keep your comments respectful. This is a grieving family suffering an unthinkable loss. Let's honor Reneesme's memory with kindness and dignity.